So here we are. Beautiful day, beautiful opportunity to be together and celebrating our life. I am just so grateful. I'm just so grateful that life is what it is and that we're figuring out how to work with it. I'm grateful that we live in an intentional universe. We live in a universe, by that I mean that we're in a universe that responds to our intention. Some of us may have believed that God was somehow outside of ourselves and rewarding and punishing and controlling our lives. And then through whatever process we've come to understand that perhaps there's more to this story. That we live in a universe that responds to our intention and brings back to us according to our thought and our belief. So we've been looking at this wonderful passage or this wonderful book called The Four Agreements, written a number of years ago by Don Miguel Ruiz, and looked at the power that we have or the capacity we have to create personal and spiritual power. And so it fits so nicely with our overall philosophy because it helps us to understand some basic rules. Now, because they're basic does not mean they are easy. I was reviewing this after 10 years or whatever. I'm like, oh, made some progress. That's the good news. Not done yet. Okay. But we looked at how powerful it is to first be impeccable with our word. Because we are working with a universe that responds to our intention, our words become the outpicturing of our thought. And so the words that we use have power. And we're literally creating our reality through our word, through our thought, through our belief. So the good news / bad news, depending on your circumstances, is if you look around at your life and it's not reflecting everything that you would have it reflect, understand it's just a reflection of who you believe yourself to be. You're not bound by that. Or, yay, right? So we become impeccable with our word by choosing how we speak and what we speak of. When we speak of lack and limitation and there's not enough and I'm at the effect of all reality, we literally begin creating that experience for ourselves. Not because anyone or anything is punishing us, but simply because if you plant, you will reap what you have sown. So that's the first step. We start looking at using our words of power, praising. We look then. The next step is to not take things personally. We've been practicing for a couple of weeks. I would check in and say, how are you doing? I know some of us are still taking a few things personally, right? As if it was against us. But when we really understand this, it is what I will be responsible is for what is happening in me. What I won't be responsible for is what is happening in you. You get to be powerful yourself, which then leads us to the next thing, which says, don't make assumptions. Really? Now, some of us do. Some of us do that. It's hard to believe. But some of us do that. We think because we have a little bit of information, we have all information. This reminds me of this, so therefore, everything else that happened after that, it must be true. And so when we can step back and not make assumptions and begin to move into powerful agreement, that's where we find our power. You see, the whole idea is about finding our personal power, our personal freedom, our own spiritual capacity to create the world that we want. When we're willing to release our concepts of what is to actually check out what is, it's amazing what you discover. It's an amazing thing. Which brings us to today. And today is called Always Do Your Best. Now, I know what happens? Some of you, your inner dialogue is so loud I can hear it from here. And when we hear that ourselves say, do your best, we hear that as be perfect. And then we fall short, don't we? Not do somebody else's best, but do your best. And so how good is that? To recognize in each and every moment that we have the ability to do our best and that our best is going to change and evolve over time. Now, some of you may remember a number of months ago, I stood up here on this stage, half naked, and said, what will I do next? How can I embarrass myself next? And I said, I know, I'm going to run a half marathon. And I will do that by the end of May, June timeframe. So, sure enough, that was a great idea 8 months ago. Brilliant. Right? Sometimes great ideas, when they're far away, they're just like, cool. Well, the day rapidly approaches, and so here we are, 1 month away, June 1, Sun Valley, half marathon. And I realized, I might want to practice. You see, because they tell me you don't want to run your first marathon as your first marathon, That's not the starting point. So you do your best. No, actually, I started some time ago. And, that first block, I was like, whew. I need a couple days off. This is insane. And so yesterday, I completed my first 8-mile walk. And so, note to self, take a hat, take a hat. So here's the thing. What's fun about this is my friend Michael Folland, who's been a great friend and inspiration to me. Michael, stand up just so they know who you are. Now, people often mistake us for twins. Yeah, and the way you tell us apart is he's the young, tall, thin one. So he said, I'm going to do this with you, and I'm like, great. So here's what I decided. I'm going to go ahead and let him win, He's young, his self-esteem is not where mine is, so... All kidding aside, look at him. He's got like 0.025% body fat, But in looking around looking at the marathon world, these people that do this half marathons, and I realize there's some demographics that are vastly underrepresented. So I'm going to represent the jiggly crowd, Those of us that aren't this big around. Seriously, though, ba-dum-boom. Here's the thing. I have to do my best. I can't do Michael's best. What I know is that there's probably going to be a little differential in our timing on this. He's running. I'm walking with the hopes of not crawling. I will get across that line, but, right? So if I compare myself to him, then I'm already defeated. But what do? So often, we evaluate ourselves according to other people's standards, to what they can do and how they should do. I could even, years ago, like 40 years ago, I used to run, sprinting and track and field, that whole thing. And if I compare myself to 40 years ago, I'm already defeated. You see, so often when this simple concept of do your best is about doing your best in this moment, and that changes and that evolves. Don't compare yourself against your brother, sister, neighbor, but am I bringing forth the best that is within me? And so each of us, through these simple agreements, can radically transform our lives. radically transform our life, to be impeccable with our word, to not take things personally. You see, when we can get beyond taking things personally, we can just do what's authentically ours to do, right? Most people don't get up in the morning trying to mess with your life, turns out. Fine, there's exceptions, but most people don't. It was Linda, our wonderful practitioner, announcer, minister, chaplain, and all-around swell gal. From time to time likes to share with me how she thinks that what sermon she thinks I ought to give. And this one she actually came through. I was like, yes. But we were talking about the process that we've been in the creation of our new building. Now, if you weren't here last week, you haven't heard the word, we put together, now listen to this, we put together a building manifestation team. Impeccable with our words. At one point I had a file in my computer called a property search team, or property search. What happens if you search? You keep searching. But when we moved it to building manifestation, we attracted some amazing folks. And so last week, if you weren't here, we gave the presentation to the whole group. Here's where we're going, here's what we're creating, here's what it's going to take for us to get from here to there. If you would like to see that presentation, because I am supported by talented and smart people, it is now on our website, as if by magic. So under the video section, you can watch that presentation and it'll fill you in. But in looking at this process that we've been in, it really kind of flows from these 4 agreements that we said in the beginning. Let us be impeccable with our word. Let us talk about what is. And one of the things that was we were in financial straits. That's just what was. So you start where you are. You see, I had to start in my marathon with where I was, not where I was 40 years ago, but where I was 8 months ago. And you start there. And so we became impeccable. We talked about what was going on. And we also talked about what we were creating together. What was the vision that we wanted to bring all of our operations under one roof, that we could do what we want when we want to do it. Did you hear all these concerts that are coming up? And I love that when musicians come, they're like, that was amazing. You don't get gigs like this, where you just loved on, like we love on people. And so it's a beautiful and wonderful thing. So we wanted everything under one roof. We were impeccable with our word in bringing our organization together to be in prayer together. And then to do the physical work to make that happen. So then we didn't take it personally. When, having set that intention, the Columbus Center, which we have been so blessed to be here. Remember, they weren't open before we made an intention that this was where we would meet. Magically, they opened. Once we made a new intention, magically, they closed. It's how the universe works. Now, it's interesting to me that we might go, cool, look what I manifested when it opened, and then we take it personally when it closed. Right? Sometimes we do that. But when we're really understanding how the universe is unfolding, we're just realizing the next thing happens, the next thing happens, this path is open, this path is closed, and we just trust and follow that. We don't make assumptions. We didn't make assumptions about a number of things. We moved to the level of agreement. And we've invited our community to be in agreement with us as we take this next step. And then we do our best. And so our best today looks like a property in the Times Square Business Park where it'll serve us for the next probably 5 to 7 years, where we can grow, we can establish, and raise $1 million so that in 7 years, our best will be to go buy our own facility with meditation gardens and a lovely statue of me. I added that last part. That really wasn't on anything else, right? Right? You just do the best you can in the moment you're in. We didn't get to where we are here overnight. We don't get to the next step overnight, but we do our best in the moment. It's a wonderful phrase. I think it comes from the 12-step tradition that says, progress, not perfection. Right? To keep doing your best in the moment. And so it's an exciting time. We're moving forward. We're creating some wonderful things. It's creating all kinds of opportunities that did not exist before. So we're envisioning what happens next for us. Once we're in our place, what are the classes we want to offer? What are the living enrichment things that we want to have available? What are the arts and creative expressions that we can create? All of that is coming as we move into this own place. And what I'm very clear of, it is not having our own place that makes us valid. It is being who we are that is housed in a proper facility so that we can really give our gift to the world. And so I woke this morning in prayer, in meditation, took some time, and I was reminded that there's a passage in this Four Agreements, and he says, first we have to understand we need to break our old agreements. You see, understanding, I love this terminology, that it is not what happened to you, it is the agreement you made with what happened. So when well-meaning, loving people told you things that were limiting to who you are, it was not that they did that, it was that we agreed with them. Right? Sometimes well-meaning people will say, I'm just going to tell you this for your own good. And therein lies a lovely limiting belief. Right? They weren't trying to harm you necessarily. Right? And so we go, okay, I agree. I'll take the pledge. So we want to break some of those old agreements. If we're choosing to have life flow and be joyous and fun and easy and be self-empowered, then we first need to break the old agreements. But two, we need to make new agreements. And this is key. It's not enough to just stop something. I often say that what we run away from, we often run into. Have you noticed that? Anybody ever left a relationship? I'll never do that again. Hi. You look just like my last relationship. Let's do it. Right? Because we didn't figure out what we were running to. Very different. So when we get that, it's about breaking our old agreements, and then it is establishing the new agreements and then living from the vision of the new possibility. So once again, as a community, I see us doing this. It is about letting go of who we've been, nothing wrong with who we've been, but letting go of our nomadic past to be planted for an extended period of time with our very own sign. Yay. Yeah. Yes, thank you. And so in meditation this morning, I was reminded of a beautiful story. And it's the story of Jesus speaking to the masses. If you're new, I'm a little loose with the interpretation, so just breathe through this. So Jesus is speaking the word of truth. He's sharing the good news. And there's a process happening, and so people are showing up like crazy. And there's a wonderful story of 5,000 people who've shown up to hear the message. Now think about that. Back in the day, no sound system, no Raj. You got to have some pipes on you to share with that many people. The Bible may exaggerate a little bit about some things. I don't know. Makes for a better story. But think about this. So here's all these people, and then lunch break comes, and we have a problem. Apparently there was no committee in charge of lunch. And so they look around and they say, what do we have? And there's not much there. I go, ooh. You got to imagine the disciples are like, oh my God, I can't believe who was in charge of the committee, right? So Jesus says, chill, or some Aramaic version of that, right? Let us go within. Let us pray. And so he brings the community into prayer together, and he blesses what is, and they all draw forth something, and it turns out there's more than enough. In fact, at the end, there's baskets of extra. Now, here's the interpretation I love. There's the miraculous. Jesus was different from us. And then there's the version that says, perhaps Jesus was very much like us, although clearly very advanced. In the day, when everybody traveled, you carried everything with you, right? You didn't leave things at home in the refrigerator. You carried everything with you. So one interpretation of this story is that people, from the laws of increase, from the blessing, brought forth what they already had, perhaps tucked away in their robe. And when they brought forth the best that they had, there was more than enough for everyone. Perhaps we're in such a situation right now. You see, I've been inviting the community to bring forth the best. That this move is an opportunity for us to stretch a little bit, stretch our own personal giving. And so I was sharing with the earlier group, I would personally love to write a check for $10,000 today. And I would do it happily and joyously, except for one little problem. Our lovely bookkeeper, April, would like to have a check that would clear the bank. I know. So I look forward to the day when that's my best and I can give that joyously. That's not. There may be some that can. That's not the point. It is about each of us bringing forth the best that is within us to bring forth the greater possibility for our entire community. And so I was reminded of those 5,000 people when they were looking at lack and limitation, not willing to share of what they had. There wasn't enough. But by going into prayer and each giving according to their own ability, there was more than enough. You see, we're not asking anyone to do more than what you can do, but we are asking you to do your best, whatever that is. And what I know about this is that from that law of increase, we have more than enough. My job is to keep remembering that this is God's church and that I serve it. When I get that mixed up, it's not pretty. So always do your best. My best today, running-wise, and when I say running, I do mean walking. You know that, right? It just sounds better when you say running. My best today, well, as of yesterday, was 8 miles. I know, rocking, huh? Next week, it'll be 9. The week after that, it'll be 10. And then June 1, it'll be 13.1. Right? And I am going to let Michael win. I've decided just, he's young, his self-esteem is not quite there, so I don't want him to feel bad. So I'm going to give him a little head start. Like an hour and a half, but that's okay. It's all good. We just do our best. Here's what I would have you know. You have power. You have tremendous power. For those of us that believe a certain way, we believe that all of the great teachers and masters through the ages had the same power we have, but they learned to achieve mastery. And the way we achieve mastery is through practice. The more we're willing to break those old agreements with what doesn't work and establish new agreements with the universal mind that wants to work through us, that's where we find our power. That's where life really happens. One last story and then we'll close. It's fun watching this thing happen. So last week after we made the big presentation, everybody's excited. Some people said, we can give you some money. I'm like, cool. And we're standing outside this door. Conrad, who's acting amazingly is our kind of contractor guy putting together numbers for what it's going to cost to remodel and do this whole thing, is standing there, and he's kind of filling me in. And Kevin Daniels, who's an architect also on the team, comes up and he says, I had these clients, and they had bought this house, and they were going to remodel the kitchen. They bought all these cabinets, and then for whatever reason, they lost the house, and they have these cabinets, and they would like to donate those to us. Standing next to him, there's 4 of us standing here, okay? Standing next to him is John, and he says, I install cabinetry. I would love to do that for the center. Now, here's the best part of it. Conrad's standing there and says, this is amazing, because the only two things that I have not done yet are figured out the cabinetry and who would install it. Right? Now we're into woo-woo time, right? But you see, that's how the universe works. We don't have to know how all the things happen, but we have to be very clear on what it is, and then do our best moment by moment. So my invitation to you, my friends, is to know that the divine loves you unconditionally, supports you in living your highest vision. So I just invite you to do your best, moment by moment. Let us pray. As we turn inward, honoring and acknowledging this divine life, this infinite presence that simply seeks its highest self-expression through all creation. And we remember that it is in this presence that we live and move and have our being. And it is indeed true that this presence has its life and being through us. So we open our hearts in this moment to the presence of unconditional love, our minds to divine wisdom. We allow ourselves to be at peace. And as we turn inward, we're simply allowing the universe to reveal more of itself through us as joy and peace and harmony, as every good thing. When the Master came to the masses and said, let us bless what we have, and let us give from our overflow, there was always more than enough. So too, when we enter into that secret place of the Most High, and we give thanks for the many blessings, we call that forth. We do our best, we give our best, we are our best. For we have been given a divine birthright of harmony and wholeness and joy and love and beauty and every good thing. And it is simply our pleasure and our privilege to inherit this dimension that has already been provided. And so we call forth wholeness, revealing itself as health and well-being. We call forth abundance, revealing itself as more than enough. We call forth peace and love and forgiveness as we release those who we believe have harmed us to their highest self-expression. And we release ourselves and make a new agreement with our higher self. This is the truth that I'm knowing. And so how grateful I am to stand witness to the power and the presence of the divine working through us collectively right now. And so I bless this spiritual community. I know that we move forward joyfully, abundantly, prosperously, with divine guidance in every possible way. We extend a blessing from this place to bless our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're accepting a world that works for everyone. We're seeing a planet at peace. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, and teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to experience the divine. And we bless those that bring forth greater spiritual awareness, greater possibility. How good it is to be here now, in the presence of the divine, and knowing this truth. In joy and gratitude, then, I simply release this word into that divine law, knowing it is already so. As together we say, and so it is.